Part 113. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1124. Gretel's experiments were carried out step by step and without stopping. Rabbit thyroid gland was dissected, minced, ground, and dissolved in distilled water. Use the magic circle invented by Mr. Norwood to extract potassium iodide. This is it. This is it. Sarah glanced over, pointed at the collecting end of the magic circle and shouted. The light inside is the brightest. Once this is collected, there will be no light next to it. Gretel. It's really nice to have a dragon. It's really convenient. You are struggling to take the instrument to test, and you have to retest, and you have to change the test method, and you are afraid that your hand will slip and miss the test. Oh, if there is no detection method, we have to invent it from scratch. As for me, I just need Cyrilla to take a look. Gretel quickly experimented and recorded. It is known that the magic circle invented by Mr. Norwood can only extract the same substance as the set target substance. The set target substance is potassium iodide, and the extracted substance must also be potassium iodide. Extract the elemental iodine in potassium iodide tablets and the elemental iodine in the rabbit's thyroid gland. Both are purple-black crystals that are easy to sublime and easy to condense after sublimation. Testing the chemical properties separately, reactions with metals, reactions with nonmetals, reactions with water, can show a variety of oxidation states from -1 to +7, it can be proven that these two iodine element has the same chemical properties. Physical properties. Gretel paused as he wrote this, his heart pounding. The most intuitive difference between the iodine in kelp and the iodine in rabbit thyroid is that one is not radioactive while the other is radioactive. And delving into the reasons. According to previous generations, the number of protons in the nucleus is the same, but the number of neutrons is different. In this world, magicians have just explored the atom and have not yet gone deeper. Or, the papers published by the parliament before Gretel left the Eagle country did not involve the mysteries inside the atomic nucleus. Being able to prove that there are two elements in the world that have the same chemical properties but are different in radioactivity is equivalent to opening the door of the atomic nucleus halfway. He held his breath, set up a magic circle, and began to measure the physical properties of this iodine element. Melting point, boiling point, water solubility, density. Density is different. The readings of the magic array are clear. There is a very small but definite difference in the density between radioactive iodine and non-radioactive iodine. Through the above various methods, we can prove that the same element may have different atoms. For example, another type of iodine discovered by the author can continuously emit rays. In view of the fact that they have the same chemical properties and are at the same position in the chemical sequence, the author temporarily names this similar element isotope. I hope that the study of isotopes can reveal more mysteries inside the elements. Greet squeezed the endless ink pen in his hand tighter and tighter. The Lord of Thunder had previously been able to sense electrons, and the next step was to sense electrons in atoms. So, if he gets the isotope again and feels the rays emitted by the radioactive isotope in person, I hope he protects himself and does not directly use his body to receive it. Perhaps, this legendary boss can directly feel the protons and neutrons the presence. By then, how will this world of magic, divine arts, and legendary mages change? Maybe, if the teacher studies it, he can make a nuclear bomb with his hands. Sarah was wandering around and around outside the laboratory. Although I really wanted to poke my head over his shoulder to see what he was writing, I still couldn't bear to disturb him. Judging from Gretel's face, it seems like he is writing a very important paper. It will be the same later. Don't make any noise now and interrupt his train of thought. Sarah, what's wrong? As she was wandering around, Ms. Jasmine came over from a distance and waved to her with a smile. In the past few days, Mr. Hawthorne was given some guidance by Udian before he left, and he seemed to have touched the threshold of advancement and was training hard. Ms. Jasmine took some time off to teach the elders, and Anari, Linji took action. It was almost lunchtime, and she had a basket on her arm filled with layers of mushrooms and was about to cook. When I saw Sirara wandering outside the research room, I turned over to chat with her. "Why are you standing here in a daze? Gretel won't let you disturb me. He's writing a paper, he won't let me play with those things. It's so boring." "Hey, there's nothing I can do about writing a thesis." Ms. Jasmine automatically ignored the proposition. What on earth did Gretel not let Sirara play with, and came to hold her hand with a smile. "Come and see, what do you want to eat for lunch? I picked very fresh mushrooms. Do you want grilled mushrooms, baked mushrooms with cheese, or mushrooms stuffed with ham?" As they talked, the two walked side by side and had already walked 7 or 8 steps. Suddenly, Sarala said "Ha" and stopped and turned around. At the same time, Elder Fahim hurried over. "What's wrong?" "It's nothing," Ms. Jasmine replied reflexively. Halfway through, he followed Sirara's gaze and froze on the spot. The next moment, Anari Linji also rushed over. "What happened?" Greet. Sirala's silver blue eyes widened, and the tips of her ears trembled slightly. However, there was no panic in the silver dragon girl's voice. Instead, she was full of joy, and she almost wanted to clap her hands and jump. "Gretel is going to advance. It's finally time to advance. Oh, she has been waiting for a long time. From the Eagle Country to here, she has traveled thousands of miles and spent a whole dry season. Now the rainy season in the rainforest is almost over. If we don't advance, a year will pass. Year after year, she has become an adult dragon. When will Gretel catch up with her?" She threw away Ms. Jasmine's arm and ran towards the research room. He ran to the door and appeared in the shape of a dragon. He lay down on the open space and covered the mage's cabin with his broad wings. "I'm not going to eat lunch. I'm here to keep watch. It doesn't have to be like this." Elder Fahim shook his head and smiled. After laughing for a while, he waved and led his disciples and others back. The fluctuations in Gretel's advanced spells have become more and more intense. He also wanted to say hello to the ancient tree, so that he wouldn't be surprised and cooperate in channeling the power. The little guy is advancing, nothing else. People outside are guarding, watching, and guiding. Gretel himself had slipped down from the desk in the research room, sat cross-legged on the ground, and entered a deep state of meditation. The advancement came so fast, like a tornado. If he had known that this would happen, he would have left the paper for a while and written it under the old tree. That is the natural mage tower, the natural element collector. However, this wave of feedback from the world came so fiercely that there was no room for adjustment, just like having diarrhea. Sometimes even if you want to run to the toilet, you may not be able to make it in time. The same goes for Gretel. Before he could react, he was flooded with feedback from the world. That momentum can be described as parting the 8-petal roof bone and pouring down a bucket of ice and snow water. It also comes with light and shadow effects. When Greet sank into meditation and guided the will of the world, he felt the messy lights and shadows in front of him keep flying. Whoosh, left, whoosh, right, whoosh, straight ahead. Is this a cloud chamber? Are you performing in front of me the trajectories of different particles in the cloud chamber? Greet murmured secretly. Oh, actually there are only alpha rays and beta rays. In the alcohol cloud chamber, there is basically no trace of gamma rays. This was something he could see with his Longan and use his imagination. So, do we still need to get the Geiger counter out? Just for a moment, Gretel suddenly felt hot all over his body, and the meditation world also shook violently. He did not dare to neglect, and quickly concentrated his energy to accept the infusion of the world's will. The whole person's spirit rose rapidly. Rise upward, rise, to the heavens that are gently undulating and blending with the material world. The higher you go up, the clearer the sky becomes, and the greener the mountains, rivers, and woods below you become. No. It is not the emerald dream that my spirit wants to blend with. Gretel gritted his teeth, braced himself, and pressed down on his mental strength. The emerald dream is good, and very beautiful. During daily meditation and sleep, I am also willing to sort it out, maintain it, and repair it. However, it is always only a part of this world, not the whole world. And what I want to see, what I want to welcome, what I want to accommodate are all the details of this world, right up to the edge of what I can recognize. Well. Far away, under the ancient tree, Elder Fahim sighed deeply. After all, this little guy is still a human magician, not an elven nature walker. Little one, if you want to follow the path of a spellcaster and don't rely on the support of the emerald dream, you will have to overcome many difficulties and ups and downs in the future by yourself. Teacher? Annery Ling asked in a low voice. There was some confusion and worry on the young elf's eyebrows. The elder shook his head at her, leaned his back against the ancient tree, raised his head and remained motionless. Each generation has its own ideas, little one, I wish you good luck. Greet's mental power turned a direction. This direction was not up, down, left, right, front, back, or the like, nor was it the kind of direction that could be marked with latitude and longitude, but something more subtle. Continue to rise. The earth spread out before him, and the rainforest stretched beneath his feet. Arbors, shrubs, ancient trees, beasts, monsters, birds, and swimming fish, they light up little by little. As the mental power increased, the ocean appeared in the perception, the distant continent appeared, and the continent on the other side of the ocean appeared. What Greet was more concerned about was the lifeless blackness beneath his feet. In the rainforest, with the rocky mountain rising from the ground as the center, the rocks collapsed, the vegetation was burned, and strange monsters hunted in the deformed mountain forest in the distance. The location and features of the rock mountain were similar to those he had seen from a distance in the Emerald Dream. The only difference is that above the rock mountain and above the entire scorched black area, there is a layer of light. On the first floor, he could only see clear light directly with the eyes of a dragon. Double monthly pastime. Double monthly pastime. There are already 3,036 starting monthly votes, and this month's goal is 4,000 votes. Please work harder. From September 28 to October 7, cats will be asked for double monthly tickets. Quickly vote for me, meow. Thanks to @origami and gart for the 100 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1125. Gretel looked down at the place relying on some mysterious feeling. On the top of Yinshan Mountain, the charred top was extremely bright, shooting straight into the sky. From the top of the mountain downwards, the light is not evenly distributed, or from deep to shallow, but in the form of strips and dots. Some places are particularly bright, and some places are dimmer. Not only that, Gretel also felt that he seemed to see small-scale explosions that continued. Here and there were stars, the light suddenly brightened, and immediately after, something was thrown out. There are those who continue to shine after falling to the ground. There are those that are blown far away and scattered into a large piece. It seems that something was ignited, causing greater ripples of light. They don't always get out. There was something like a wall that restricted and blocked it. Several times, Gretel saw the things that were thrown out, sliding down the invisible barrier, or even rebounding. However, such a barrier is not always effective. When something thrown hits the barrier will shake, burst, and spark. Even looking down from above, One can see intermittent rings of light in circles, trailing outwards. Greet strongly suspected that this was where the barrier was damaged and leaked. The tails extend outward one by one, and there are clusters of small dots scattered around it. A few large circles away, the brilliance gradually dimmed, lingering on the ground like mist, with bright spots moving quickly from time to time. Strangeness. Even in the place where Fat Man, Skinny Man and Little Boy exploded, grass seeds blown by the wind can germinate 2 weeks later. After 3 to 5 years, small mammals, including rats, will be able to run around. Decades later, the city center that had been around for a long time had been repopulated with people, and even the center of the nuclear explosion could be visited and paid homage to. Even the outskirts of Chernobyl have become places that can be visited. And the secret realm of Elves, thousands of years later, is still burning with unquenchable flames, radiating light that can kill people. What happened in those years, what exactly exists in the secret realm of Elves, so that it will last for thousands of years? Never extinguished. Greet looked at it intently, and then another. He couldn't see it for too long. The will of the world lifted him up, until he overlooked the entire world he could recognize. He rose to the highest point, then dropped rapidly, and plunged into the microcosm. Matter, molecules, atoms, atomic nuclei, electrons, all kinds of brilliant rays emitted from atoms, can be pulled by magnetic fields, can make traces in alcohol cloud chambers, can be captured by dragon's eyes. Higher organisms, lower organisms. Bacteria, cells, viruses, cell membranes, cytoplasm, nucleus. Elder Fahim's hand-rubbed electron microscope showed the various structures of cells. Finally, the macroscopic downward fall and the microscopic upward rise meet at the central anchor point, Gretel himself. The huge power was led by spiritual power, rushed into his meditation world, and began to strengthen Gretel himself. The first, of course, is the meditation core, a universal biological supercomputer. This thing is the basis of all research and the basis of all magic. Now we can do B ultrasound, CT, and three-dimensional reconstruction. In the future, we may be able to perform MRI, control the gamma knife to cut tumors, and perform various examinations and treatments. All research, recording, calculation, combat, and all work depend on it. How long will it take for Gretel to advance this time? In the distance, Elder Fahim leaned against an old tree and looked at the sky above the woods. In the legendary field of vision, a funnel-like cloud suddenly appeared, whistling and rotating, sucking in the power of the forest, the earth, and nature. Select, filter, inject into greed. All around, branches swayed, birds flew in fright, wild beasts and monsters instinctively moved away from the core of the cloud, and squatted far away, looking longingly at the center of the cloud. Want it? Want it? So powerful, so gentle, just a little bit can be worth months or even years of hard work. The ancient trees he was leaning on stretched out their leaves in that direction eagerly. During the spiritual connection between the two, Elder Fahim even heard the ancient tree complaining. I'm jealous. So envious. That little oak tree could actually stand in the center of the clouds and absorb that power to its heart's content. He wants it too. Even if you can rub it in a little bit. Elder Fahim smiled and patted the ancient tree. Then, he stood up, struck the wooden stick, and powerful but gentle fluctuations spread out in all directions. Don't mess around. Don't grab it. After its owner has finished absorbing it, if there is anything left, you can do whatever you want. Who dares to strike first and interfere with the person who attracted this power? I'm still here. The elders were outside and Cyrilla was inside. Greet, who was meditating hard, was not disturbed in the slightest from beginning to end. He allowed the biological supercomputer to grow to the limit of this advancement, and the remaining energy began to continue to strengthen. Use the energy gifted by the will of the world to pinch the shape of cells to strengthen your meditation core. Well, last time I finished pinching the bones and the cardiovascular part. This time, I started to come down bit by bit from the head. Ah, it's so annoying. Just in an eye, the pigment epithelial cells look like pigment epithelial cells, the cones look like cone cells, the rod cells look like rod cells, and the bipolar cells look like bipolar cells. The retina itself is divided into 4 layers. He had to pinch out all kinds of different cells, different neurons, different connections, and conduction methods bit by bit with his own thoughts. If you want to do something here, for example, you want to evolve a pair of eyes with low light vision, dark vision, or a pair of dragon eyes that can see rays directly, or can feel magnetic fields. Then you need to pinch more and richer cells in the core of meditation to enhance your feelings. Gretel didn't want to do too much to himself for the time being, lest he overturn the car. He finished shaping his eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and various sensory organs step by step. He wanted to continue to squeeze it, but he already felt weak. So tired, really so tired. Compared with bone and cardiovascular cells, where a cell pattern is determined and copied and pasted directly, the human body's senses are much more refined and the workload is much greater. Well, I just hope that after this wave is formed, through the resonance between the core of meditation and the body, the physical quality can be improved. He doesn't expect anything else. He is very grateful that his eyesight remains at 2.0 and he doesn't fall. The oak staff swayed happily. At the top, opposite the 11th leaf, another fresh young leaf opens rapidly. In the distance, the ancient tree trembled and angrily dropped a large number of dead leaves, which covered Elder Fahim's head and face. This kid. So lucky. If you follow a good master, you will progress faster than they do, standing in the same place in a miserable way, exposed to the wind, rain, and sun every day, with wild boars digging into tree roots, tigers grinding their claws, and wild birds pecking seeds. Tree, much faster. Elder Fahim laughed and shook his head, patted the tree trunk with his backhand, and sent out a ray of natural power to comfort him. In the distance, a tired and high-spirited voice sounded. Elder. I'm back. Elder Fahim raised his eyebrows, stood up immediately, and walked over quickly. In the distance, the sound of trampling on the grass kept getting closer, getting faster and faster, but also getting heavier. Listening to the movement, it was as if a wild boar king weighing 700 to 800 pounds was running in the jungle. Yudian. Are you back? How do you feel this time? It exhausted me to death, the bushes shook, and a big lump, really a big green object came out. With a clang sound, the object hit the ground, and the elder saw that it was a huge ancient vine, covered with green leaves, wrapped around a huge human figure. In front of the human figure, Idian untied the vines on his shoulders and jumped away hastily. 500 pounds of armor. A whole old vine. And a box from the boss. Gretel, this kid, is killing me. Where are the others? I'm going to beat him up. I'll give him what he wants. Brought it back. You look good this time. The elder smiled and stroked his beard, looked at Idian up and down, and gathered a water ball to hit him on the head. Idian quickly shook his hands. No. No need. I have washed it. I wash it every day in the contaminated area. After I come out, I find a place to wash it first. I use the cloud room to see if there is any light before I come back. I have washed all these things, too. I brought it back if there was no problem. The elder smiled and dispersed the water ball, flipped his hands, and cast spells one after another towards Idian. Idian stood and let him inspect, while still reporting. Don't tell me, this time I went in, I felt much better than last time. There was no tightness in my chest, no headache, and no astringent, metallic taste in my mouth. Gretel, this kid, has many demands. A lot, and it really makes sense. It's just that the lead armor is too heavy. I've been targeted by monsters several times, and they only jumped close before I could react, and it's not ventilated. I stank inside. By the way, what spell are you activating, Elder? I can feel it from afar, my dear. Such a big reaction. Elder, is it okay for you to go away? Do you want to finish presiding over the affairs there first, and then come and check for me? Oh, that's not the spell I activated. Elder Fahim finished the last check spell and said slowly. It's little Greed who is advancing. After sending you in, he did a batch of experiments to verify the principle of the medicine, and then advanced. What? Advanced so quickly? Idion turned his head, raised his head, and looked at the open space in the distance, at the vortex that made him feel heavy and a little stuffy in his chest. How long has it been since he last advanced? I think I heard Uge mention it once. Was it half a year ago or more than half a year ago? Has he advanced again? Is he nature's biological son? Killing more than 100 rabbits at a time, naturally you still regard him as his biological son. Elder Fahim could not answer this question. Although Greed did not follow the route of the Emerald Dream, nature's love and the world's blessing are not fake. Idion muttered to himself. Is this the progression from level 11 to level 12, right? Such a big movement? It's over, I must seize the time to beat him a few more times. At this rate, when he reaches half-step legend, I won't be able to beat him. Double monthly pastime. Double monthly pastime for the last 12 hours of this month. There have been 3,452 starting monthly votes, and this month's goal is 4,000 votes. There are still 548 photos to go. In other words, everyone only needs to vote 274 more. If you get 4,000 votes, there will be 6 additional chapters next month. It's chapter 6. From September 28 to October 7, cats will be asked for double monthly tickets. Quickly vote for me, meow. The cat jumps up, somersaults, backflips, straightens its body and stretches out its paws to grab the monthly ticket. Thanks to the Strong Sea Monster for the 5,000 starting coins reward. Thanks to Redsnowdens for the 1,500 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1126. A half-step legend, the high-level warrior of the Elves, Idion. Although he kept saying we must seize the time to beat Gretel more often, he was actually a little worried in his heart. Squatting under the tree, looking at the clouds in the sky from a distance, without blinking. Elder, why do you think Gretel has advanced? When I set off, he had no intention of advancing at all. Is there any problem in being so hasty? This kid won't use any inappropriate methods to solve our problems, right? Otherwise, he wouldn't be so fast. It is true that humans advance faster than elves. But now that we have reached the intermediate level, who is still taking one step a year just like eating and drinking? What are you doing? What is your look like? He suddenly turned towards Bernard. The barbarian was startled by him. He immediately raised his hands, clenched his right hand into a fist, curled up only 4 fingers on his left hand, and the little finger was still curled up in a weird way. I'm counting how many years it has been since the boss was a first-level mage to now. How many years? Elder Fahim and Idion asked in unison. The barbarian shook his head blankly. The numbers are messed up. But messy or not, one thing is for sure. On average, it will definitely take less than a year for a boss to level up. Even if you don't look at it, his right hand has one more finger than his left hand. Idion clicked his tongue and stopped asking questions, squatting quietly on the spot. The elder stared at Gretel's movements with one eye and his face with the other as he kept pulling out things. Eat. Eat. Drink it. Eat this again. Okay, wow, what is this that the elder is talking about? It's so spicy. Ha, 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 ha. His face was twisted, he was breathing out with his tongue out, and he was jumping around desperately. Elder Fahim glared at him and gave him another bottle. Drink it. This time you entered the secret realm. It's just that you suffered less damage than before. It's not okay at all. Alas, when greed completes his advancement, let him take another look. His thinking is different from mine. Maybe you can see some different places. Gretel is still in the process of advancement. The oak staff has sprouted its 12th leaf, indicating that the advancement of the natural priest has been completed. However, the advancement of the 12th level mage has just begun. Powerful force washed down. The gift of the worlds will carries the powerful elemental power in the hinterland of the elf forest and injects it into Gretel's body. The core of meditation built with spiritual power and world will, and the perfect form accurate to the cellular level is used as a template to spread outward. Little by little, Greet's body changes. Make him stronger. Make him tougher. Let his strength, bone strength, muscle strength, endurance, cardiopulmonary function, and his ability to sense nature and sense magic be all improved. Theoretically, after experiencing so many erosions and build ups, Gretel's physical fitness alone is no worse than that of warriors at the same level. If he wasn't lazy and useless and didn't want to charge into battle, he could easily become a mid-level warrior as long as he was willing to practice a little. However, Greed himself only wants to be a spellcaster. So he devoted all his attention to his own world of meditation. With this advancement, a new picture has unfolded in the world of meditation. Cell. Cell membrane. Cytoplasm. Nucleus. Under the light microscope, all kinds of different cells are crowded together. The most special kind, which is messy inside, will be recognized by the treatment as the internal tissue of the human body, will absorb and rob the power of the treatment, and will proliferate infinitely. After being recorded by the meditation world, it will be easier to designate this kind of cells and kill them in a targeted manner. However, Greet only glanced at these newly emerged elements. He concentrated all his energy on the edge of the meditation world, the wave-like fluctuations and ripplings of water. No, that's not the edge of the meditative world undulating. That was his entire meditation world, which was gently turbulent from the core to the periphery. There was something, overlapping with his meditation world. Greet tried his best to stretch his mental strength to detect the new thing. Soon, he clearly felt that the new thing that appeared was not an outsider, but clearly himself. It is a part of himself, another form of existence of his own meditation world. This world is composed of more than one level, or more than one dimension. Our daily existence, or in other words, our daily activities, battles, and transformations, is called the material world. This aspect of knowledge, whether it is the Lord of Thunder or Elder Fahim, has told Gretel from different angles. And our spirit will ascend into a higher world. You can imagine that there is a mirror above the sky, reflecting our figures, that is the world that the spirit of all of us will ascend into. The more powerful the spirit, the more powerful it can call out to the outside world in that world. And the power that is called is injected into the material world, which creates the possibility of growth in this world. And the more similar the spirit is, the more powerful it can be in that world. The more they are the same. The paths of magicians vary greatly, so they are only as powerful as individuals, and they can only substantify their individual spiritual power to form small worlds. And priests, especially priests like the Guanghui cult, can even form an existence like Heaven Mountain by virtue of their unified belief and huge number of people. Of course, it is not that easy to establish the anchor of Heavenly Mountain on the ground. To intercept an existence similar to a demi-plane, you have to inject everyone's spirituality into it, and you have to pay too much spiritually and materially. Otherwise, launching the divine descending technique from the edge of the hall straight would not be so difficult or expensive. And the elves? Their collective consciousness built the largest spiritual world that Gretel had ever seen. The Emerald Dream. It reflects the human heart and the dream of nature. Maintaining this dream can also heal the wounds of the earth and produce real benefits to nature. So, is this how the materialization of spiritual power begins? The illusory spirit gradually begins to interfere with reality, gradually begins to absorb the power of reality, and finally becomes a demi-plane-like existence like the teacher's meditation world. Gretel subconsciously held his breath. The world of meditation is gently undulating, its edges swelling and shrinking, visible separations, and overlaps again. This is the first time that his meditation world in reality and his spirit in the spiritual world are reflected on the same surface of water. So, try to strengthen it. Strengthen it and make it easier for your mental power to intervene in reality, so that your meditation world can one day become a portable hospital. You can use the world of meditation to perform examinations and operations. Once your mental strength is as strong as your arms, wouldn't it be more convenient than the hospital created by the Mage's Mansion technique? When the world of meditation expands, it may be able to cover hundreds or even thousands of people at the same time, relieving their injuries and pain at once. How wonderful that is! Greet tried his best to absorb elements and fill his own meditation world, both realistic and spiritual. Gradually, at the edge of the meditation world, Greet's familiar colored light appeared. X-ray, alpha rays, beta rays, gamma rays. Gretel muttered silently in his mind. In addition to some lights that he had seen with his dragon eyes, there were also some indescribable brilliance that he had never seen before. Perhaps these brilliance are the secret that spirituality can reflect reality and that the world of meditation can intervene in the material world. Gretel didn't know and couldn't ask. He just fills up his meditative world until it stabilizes and reaches its boundaries. Well, time is running out. Somewhere along the way, the will of the world gave him a prophecy. There is only the last bit of time left to build the inherent magic of this advancement. So what to choose? This time when he advanced, Greet had a wide range of choices. If he wants to pursue treatment, he can choose cancer cell killing surgery. The 4 steps of locating, killing, detoxifying, and treating are strung together to complete the spell in one go. If he wants to go in the direction of exploration, he can choose the Cloud Chamber spell, Greet's Alcohol Cloud Chamber. By the way, he still has energy and can add all the glowing and sounding versions modified by the elders into it. Of course, if he wants to go in the direction of evolution, the method of communicating with plants is also very good. Whether it's teaching the oak stick how to do dialysis, teaching kelp how to enrich iodine, or teaching other plants to grow the medicinal ingredients he needs. This is all very good. But Gretel thought for a long time and had no choice. He settled down, thought carefully about the spells he had learned before, and selected the transformation spell. The essence of transfiguration is nothing more than setting up a framework and letting one's body and spirit resonate with this framework. The framework is built by your own spiritual power, and its core is naturally in line with your own spirituality. The more the shape of the frame matches your goal, the higher the success rate of deformation. Once you become familiar with the deformation technique, you can make modifications to the frame, from full deformation to partial deformation. Then I will leave enough interfaces on the frame. For example, assuming an eye cell structure similar to that of a mantis shrimp, and the corresponding neural interface, humans can see the 3 primary colors, and I can see 16 colors. Humans can see normal light, and I can see polarized light. For example, by presetting crystal cells similar to those of a pigeon, I can directly feel the Earth's magnetic field. For example, preset a structure similar to the eyes of a dragon. Moreover, because these interfaces are memorized in the meditation core and can be plugged and unplugged instantly, I can keep trying and changing them without worrying about harming the main body. The world's gifts pour in like crazy. Cyrilla, who was coiled around the door, suddenly said hey softly and twisted her slender head and neck back. Gretel? What are you doing again? For a moment, the mage's cabin was silent and disappeared into the air. Gretel stood in the middle of the open space and raised a bright smile to her. Success. It worked. Great. Cyrilla flapped her wings vigorously. She suddenly lowered her head, flapped her wings, and with a flying shovel, Gretel was lifted up and thrown onto her back. His muscles flexed slightly, a wisp of breeze surrounded his body, and then he fluttered his wings and soared into the sky. The silver dragon girl unfolded her slender figure, flying and rolling in the air, and her crisp laughter fell in series. Gretel is great. Greet has successfully advanced again. After a few more times, she will be like me. Elder Fahim and others had already hurried over. Seeing this, they could only stand side by side on the ground and look up. Cyrilla celebrated for a long time before flying down with Gretel. The elder glanced at it and immediately said, huh? Gretel? You're only, level 12, right? Why did you touch the edge of level 15? That looming, expanding, and contracting power that can almost interfere with reality. This is a sign that for level 15 spellcasters, the world of meditation has begun to materialize. Why, Gretel is only level 12 and can he reach this realm? Double monthly pastime. The last 4 hours of this month. Last 4 hours. There have been 3,724 starting monthly votes, and this month's goal is 4,000 votes. There are still 276 photos to go. In other words, everyone only needs to vote 138 more. If you get 4,000 votes, there will be 6 additional chapters next month. It's chapter 6. From September 28 to October 7, cats will be asked for double monthly tickets. Quickly vote for me, meow. The cat jumps up, somersaults, backflips, straightens its body and stretches out its paws to grab the monthly ticket. Thanks to @Mermaid's Love Song for the 1,500 starting coins reward. Thanks to @YahwehDengzian233 for the reward of 120 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1127. So, you were, inspired by the Emerald Dream. Elder Fahim put his hands behind his back and walked around Greet, looking left and right, up and down. On the other side, Idian also wanted to get closer to take a look, but every time he got closer, the elder stared back. What are you looking at? What are you looking at? What can you see as a soldier, and what can you do if you see it? You and he are taking different paths. Don't interfere with my observation. Get out of the way. Gretel stood up straight and allowed the elder to look at him. At the same time, he carefully reported his thoughts and feelings during his advancement. Elder Fahim listened without saying a word and nodded. It seems that's right. The Emerald Dream is a dream of nature and a collective dream of our nature servers. In your words, it is the beginning of spiritual interference with reality. Once you take this step, you will be able to cast spells smoothly. There are many, and the penetrating power of the spell is also much stronger. As he spoke, he half turned around and waved to Idian, who was standing far away, motioning for him to come over. As soon as the elf warrior took a step, he heard the elder say, "It will be much easier if you use your mental power to detect and treat others. Come on, try it on him." What? You didn't let me come up during the investigation. Did you think of me when you were the target? I am leaving. With such muttering, Idian still stepped forward slowly and stretched out a hand to greet. Elder Fahim said next to him, "You can sense it and see, Idion, don't bring up the defensive power yet, let Greet try it. Gretel tried his best to spread his spiritual power and penetrate into Idion's body. Skin, epidermis, dermis, subcutaneous tissue, blood vessels. It's hard, it's really hard. However, when the mental power penetrates, there is an invisible force that gently fluctuates, counteracting the opponent's spontaneous defense. If it were before the advanced stage, Gretel estimated that his mental power might not even reach the dermal layer. Just like when treating the devil tiger run-out. Well, good job. Come on, Idion, you can increase your defense power a little more and see what Gretel can do. Idion responded softly. No matter how hard he exerted himself, his muscles, skin, and hair did not tremble. However, Gretel felt a layer of light rising from the opponent's hand. A thin, flowing, but very tough light adhered to the back of Idion's hand. Gretel calmed down, feeling the fluctuations of that layer of light, and used his mental power to stick to it bit by bit. Hey! That's really good, Idion raised his eyebrows. You are only at level 12, and you can enter my defense layer. Little Gretel, remember, your mental power is much stronger than that of spellcasters of the same level. If you enter the opponent's defense circle by surprise, you can once you lock onto the opponent, the fight will be easy. Gretel felt sad and nodded quickly. After thinking for a while, I took advantage of the situation to ask. That's how I fought against the level 18 Heavenly Knight. I couldn't lock onto the opponent at first and couldn't cast my spell. Later, it was Cyrilla who broke through the opponent's defense and I was able to hit him. To be precise, it was not a hit, but the ability to successfully throw the electrocardiogram probe onto the opponent to guide the subsequent chain of lightning. According to what you said, I can use my mental power to enter the opponent's defense layer and increase the intensity of the attack. Of course. Otherwise, how do you think those high-level spellcasters can compete with high-level warriors? Do they use spells to hit them hard? Come on, give it a try. Gretel hesitated. Idion sneered, stepped forward, and stretched his right hand closer to him. Don't be timid. According to your judgment standards, you are level 12 and I am level 19. I am already half a legend. If you try your best, it is just like a mosquito bite. If you can't hit me, I will hit you. Is you? Elder. Little Gretel, it's time for you to practice. Elder Fahim stood aside leisurely. When he heard Gretel's protest, he smiled at him. Even as a spellcaster, the close combat ability and reaction ability need to be strengthened. You can't reach level 15, level 19, or become legendary, and still live by wearing a shield every day, right? While Idion is here, let him train you well. Gretel gritted his teeth. In order not to be beaten like a dog every day, the old warrior of the warrior temple, the days when he trained him was still fresh in his memory, he also risked his life. How can I hurt you? I'll just call you out. Isn't this bullying? Isn't this bullying? A half-legendary high-level warrior must be so strong in pain tolerance. He pricked it with a knife, and if it penetrated, people might be able to bear it. It's time for a trick. Gretel breathed in, breathed out. Silence, clenching fists, turning around. Wait for me to prepare. Hey, we still need to prepare. Okay, you prepare as much as you can, 1 hour is enough, right? Don't try to waste time. An hour obviously doesn't take up. Greet opened a pile of bottles and jars, weighed them, dissolved them, sucked them out, and dissolved them again. In less than 5 minutes, he turned around holding a test tube. Are you ready? I'm coming. Idion stretched out his palms leisurely. Greet took a deep breath, and mentally locked the liquid in the test tube. There was only a small bottom, adding up to less than 1 ml, and leaned forward. Encountering Idion's defense layer, undulating, integrating, and contacting the body surface, the epidermis, dermis, and artery of the left ring finger, detoxification technique. Act in reverse. Ouch. Idion jumped up suddenly. Shake your hands, shake your hands, shake your hands hard. Little Greet, what kind of spell are you doing? It hurts so much. Potassium ion implantation. Gretel innocently spread his hands. Add 10 ml of 10% potassium chloride solution to 500 ml of 5% glucose injection, and mix evenly. Then, take 1 ml of the solution and inject the potassium ions inside at one time. Well, 1 ml is equivalent to about 20 drops. According to clinical requirements, the intravenous infusion of potassium chloride solution is 40 to 60 drops per minute. For people with more sensitive reactions, it may even be adjusted to 20 to 30 drops per minute to avoid pain. 20 drops of potassium ions are injected into the artery of the left ring finger at one time. Hyperkalemia is not a problem, after all, from the artery to the heart, it still needs to pass through the capillary network, and then it can slowly come back. Early it's diluted. However, if the fingers are connected to the heart, it will definitely hurt. Moreover, Greet promises that this pain will definitely not be light. It will definitely catch you by surprise and make you shout out. After all, this is no better than a knife, or even a fire, lightning, acid attack, etc. You have no defense at all. Looking at Idion, he held his index and middle fingers in pain and raised his ring finger forcefully. The corners of Greet's mouth curled up slightly. Fortunately, he chose the ring finger. If it were the middle finger, this guy would be in pain, so he would definitely show him the middle finger. Little Gretel, your move is too fierce. Idion waved his hand, raised his fingers, and pinched his fingers. He bared his teeth and turned around twice before finally coming to his senses. Gretel estimated that it was the potassium ions that passed through the capillaries, returned to the veins, and were finally filtered. Only then did the old man have the strength to speak. My whole hand is throbbing with pain. Fortunately, it was just a finger slap. If it was a hit on the heart, wouldn't it be painful? If you hit the heart, it doesn't matter whether it hurts or not. As long as it can bypass or penetrate the opponent's defense barrier, high concentration potassium ions are injected into the heart in an instant, and the result is cardiac arrest. It doesn't matter whether it hurts or not. Idion muttered and shook his hands. Elder Fahim watched them try their moves with a smile on his face. After Idion was stunned, he began to tell Gretel. It is a good thing to increase your mental power, but Gretel, before you reach level 15, you must try your best to broaden your horizons and see the richest world. In this case, when you enter the high level, your meditation world will there be enough flexibility and accommodation? So, when are you going to Evermeet Island? Greet's eyes darkened, and he didn't say go or not go. Turning his head, he started asking Idion. You're back from the elf secret realm. Are you feeling uncomfortable? Nausea? Vomiting? Diarrhea? Do you have more hair falling out? You can stay here for a while and observe. By the way, let me draw some blood. Elder Fahim sighed secretly and did not forcefully persuade him. For a child who has never been taken care of by his mother since he was a child, it is good that he has a good impression of elves and is willing to come to the fertile forest. As for the rest, take your time. He just stared at Idion with heavy eyes, signaling for him to cooperate. A group of people moved to the edge of the research room. Gretel was holding a notebook. When the patient said something, he would write down. Disgusting, there were 2 times when I was about to leave the secret realm, it would be much better to return to the outer polluted area. Vomiting, only once. I'm not sure whether it was because I felt uncomfortable in the secret realm or because I didn't eat much. Diarrhea without hair. The hair really didn't fall out? I'm sure it didn't fall out. Why are you looking at me like this? Gretel turned away and curled his lips silently. I didn't doubt you much at first. Your hairline looks normal. You jumped 3 feet high, so your hair really fell out. Lost a lot. Yudian, tell the truth. Tell the truth to the healer. Elder Fahim helped. While helping, he also raised his hand, and a ray of light flashed. Gretel, ask again. Don't worry, I have released detect lies. As long as he tells a lie, a red light will immediately appear around him. Greet. There is also this kind of consultation method. If in the past life, the doctor could use detect lies at will, there would probably not be so many inconsistencies and fights in the clinic. No, there may be more fights, full martial arts on the spot. He pressed the corners of his mouth firmly, asked for another diagnosis, and took blood for observation under a microscope. Udian followed step by step and kept asking. So why do I feel better this time? The pollution is still there. Is it because the rays are blocked? It's the rays that really hurt people? How did it hurt me? Why does this pollution emit rays? Gretel stopped, turned around, and picked up the paper he had just written. He patted it twice, used scribe to make a copy, and handed the copy to him. I guess it's because of the radiation. We need to continue to study more detailed issues. Take a look at this paper. I just finished writing this advanced article. It should be helpful to you. By the way, you have what I want. Have you brought them all back? Double monthly pastime. Double monthly pastime. The cat spins the Hot Wheel 360 degrees, struggling to summon the guaranteed monthly ticket. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, and ask for all kinds of things. Thanks to @Red Comet Mars for the reward of 6,000 starting coins. Thanks to @Pingming Bio for the 1,500 starting coins reward. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1128. Gretel takes blood. Greet takes the smear. Gretel leaned under the microscope and looked at it bit by bit. Gretel through distinguish bloodline change to explore the changes in various components in the blood. Fortunately, I took a blood sample before leaving. Greet observed, measured, and counted while making notes on the paper. After writing a few strokes, he raised his head and compared it with the blood sample he took before Idian set off. There is no significant change in serum potassium, there is no significant change in serum sodium, blood chloride. White blood cells, red blood cells, hemoglobin, and platelets are all significantly reduced. Lymphocytes increase significantly. Udayan, you have to rest here for a while. He put the two recording papers side by side and pushed them in front of the elf warrior. Although the omnipotent meditation core can remember everything, real-time recording is still necessary. Firstly, it can be shown to others, and secondly, when publishing a paper, the original data will be available for reference. Otherwise, the bosses will ask, where are your experimental records? Where are they? In my mind. Although with Gretel's current status, he would not be beaten out of his head, nor would he be sent to the pseudo-controller department to search for memories, this was not a good example after all. In reality, all experimental records that can be output by instruments must be output by instruments, and they must be original images and cannot be modified by smearing, PS, etc. Japanese scholar Abikata Haruko was exposed for academic fraud and was ruined. Her mentor committed suicide because of it. The key evidence included cutting and processing experimental images. As a subject leader, Greed must lead the team well even though he is thousands of miles away. For this reason, just write 2 more strokes, just write 2 more strokes. The gap is so big. Idian grabbed the record paper and looked up and down, left and right. He looked at the recording paper, looked at Greet's microscope, then pushed Greet away, and looked at the microscope for a long time, with a confused look on his face. What's wrong? Forget it, it is obviously unrealistic to teach a person to learn to read blood smears instantly. Gretel sighed and still photographed the paper to him. Just keep watching this. I've finished reading. Yudian looked confused. It was just a few pages, mostly filled with data and tables, and he read it in less than 10 minutes. After reading it, I know every word, but... Then what? Then... Gretel was speechless. Idian continued to look at him blankly. I don't know why you are showing this to me. Is there something you want me to do? Or do you want me to go to the elf secret realm again to help you get something more to perfect the experiment? Greet gave up completely. Forget it, he still has a common language with spellcasters, or warriors, as long as the other party can understand his explanation, or in other words, his instructions. He copied the paper, took back 2 recording papers, and went to find Elder Fahim. The first thing is to take a picture of Udian's blood test results and show him. Elder, you see, Udian's current situation is still not good. The decrease in red blood cells and hemoglobin means that the blood's ability to carry nutrients has decreased, and people will feel tired and weak, with heart palpitations and shortness of breath. With a decrease in white blood cells, a person's resistance will decrease, and diseases that were originally able to be resisted will no longer be easy to resist. With reduced platelets, wounds that could have stopped bleeding are prone to bleeding. Elder Fahim twirled his beard and nodded repeatedly. Nod his head and glare at Udian, nod his head again, and glare at Udian again. After listening, I grabbed 2 pieces of recording paper and slapped them in front of him. Did you hear that? Take some time to rest and don't think about troubles or fighting. There is no shortage of you as a forest guard in the forest. But Dashidian was anxious. This time he entered the elf secret realm and saw that the situation was getting worse and worse. He really wanted to go there again as soon as possible. Before he could argue, Elder Fahim had already lowered his head. Gretel, is this why you advanced this time? Just this paper? Greet nodded vigorously. The elder read 10 lines at a glance, quickly read it once, then turned to the first page and started reading it a second time. This time, he looked very slowly, very slowly. While watching, my fingertips trembled slightly, and I closed my eyes from time to time, as if entering a meditative state. After finally finishing reading, I turned to the center again and looked at the experimental process and diagrams carefully. This paper, what remains in our bodies and continues to hurt us, turns out to be this kind of thing. Gretel stared at him intently. When the elder closed his eyes, took a long breath, and opened them again, he immediately raised his face and smiled brightly and sweetly. Elder, can you do me a favor? What's up? Send me a letter. Send this paper, as well as some related materials, back to Nevis for me, to the teacher. Elder Fahim's expression suddenly became solemn. He had just briefly read this paper, and it had already stirred up countless turmoils in his heart. Based on this paper, it is conceivable that there will be infinitely important discoveries in the future. Gretel didn't want to let this paper linger in the forest for 3 to 5 years before publishing it after returning to Nevis. He wanted to send it back immediately, which he completely understood. However, thinking that the research materials for this paper were taken from the secret realm, the elder will inevitably have some concerns. Greet, this paper is indeed very important, and I understand that you want to send it back as soon as possible. But, you have to know, this is our secret place. He turned around and moved his arms in a wide circle. The old man's gaze swept from the coastline in the north, the estuary in the west, to the vast grasslands in the south, enveloping the secret realm of elves deep in the rainforest. Even if it blows up, is destroyed, and everyone moves away, it is still our secret place. It is the secret place that generations of our elves have traveled across the oceans and guarded by groups of people. I don't hope that a large number of people will rush out. Come here and disturb our peace. Greet was speechless for a moment. In terms of first come, first served, development, protection, and possession, the secret realm of the elves should belong to the elves no matter what. If this paper is sent to the public, there is no guarantee that the teacher or senior brother will try to read it. He lowered his head and thought. Elder, except for the elves, is there no outsider who knows about this place? Of course someone knows. The elder's eyes turned to him, and then to Sirari, who was poking his head outside the laboratory, and nodded. Whether it's the dragons or the legends of other races, they at least know that this place exists. But, when it comes to legends, everyone will restrain each other and won't rush in without permission. Just say it. In the year without summer, the teacher and several other legends, together with their senior brothers and sisters, went to the southern part of the New World to kill an indigenous demigod and took its divine crystal back to promote crops. Along the way, you must pass through the rainforest. Could teacher and the others know about such a huge phenomenon in the elf secret realm? Gretel immediately laughed. Elder, in this case, you should send a letter for me. You see, if you don't send a letter for me, I will have to run to the Eagle Kingdom by myself, and go through the Wizard of the Eagle Kingdom Tower teleportation. I don't know how many people will see it. He naturally spread his hands and said. From the Wizard Tower in the Eagle Country, it was transmitted to the Wizard Tower in the small town of Waltham on the east coast, and then to the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel was then sent to the teacher's office. Maybe it wasn't the teacher who checked it? Which senior brother or sister was the first to check it? Check. Sending magic materials is even further. You have to have someone take them from the Wizard Tower in the Eagle Country to the beach, and then take a ship back to Nevis. Considering that the materials are important after all, we might not go to the Storm Islands, but go directly across New World, go to the town of Waltham and get on the ship. Okay. Elder Fahim kept talking to him until his head was full. If this was his disciple, he would have struck several explosive chestnuts in a row. But Gretel was not the one, so he could only stare twice. You mean, if I send it directly to your teacher, fewer people will know about it, right? Then I have to be able to send it? Even if I am a legend, I don't have an anchor in Nevis, so I can't send it. Send it over. So, it's okay to have an anchor. Greet began to dig into his pocket. He took it out with his left hand and found an ancient vine bird on the table. The vines on its body were black and shiny, jumping around and looking lifelike. With a move of his right hand, a lightning kitten nuzzled, crawled along the hem of his trousers, and climbed to his shoulder. Lie down comfortably, lift your hind legs, and start licking yourself. This kitten was given to me by the teacher. Gretel first pointed at the lightning kitten. The spirit of the teacher once came to the kitten and communicated with me. If you can inspire it and let the teacher come again, I will just show him the paper. Elder Fahim frowned and said nothing. Greet pointed at the old vine bird again. This little bird was given to me by Elder Tapras, who is a natural legend. Elder, if you can find his mark, inspire this little bird, and let it fly back directly across the ocean, then even the message and the cargo, can't they all be taken back? Elder Fahim glared at Greet viciously. The lightning kitten looks innocent and harmless, but to be able to restrain such strong lightning, one can only imagine how powerful its master's mental power is. If it touches you, you might get a severe blow. And that old vine bird, little guy, if you want me to urge it to fly across the ocean and find its original owner accurately, do you know how much it costs? So, why should I do this for you? What a great question. Greet thought, and thought again, and finally decided to tell the truth. Perhaps, after the paper is sent back, what the teacher will research may be of some help in repairing the elf secret realm. Then prove it to me. You do some simple research and come up with some preliminary things to prove that it is possible, and I will help you send a letter, how about it? Double monthly pastime. Double monthly pastime. Cat has been working hard to update from October 1st to 7th. During this time, everyone must give me your monthly tickets. The cat dances with its forepaws and taps the keyboard, trying hard to summon the guaranteed monthly ticket. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1129. Research here. It took 2 or 3 months to produce a preliminary result that could convince the elders. Then, Elder Fahim helped urge the lightning kitten or the ancient vine bird to contact Nevis directly, without missing a single day. Or a maximum delay of 10 days. The teacher will definitely receive the paper, and if it is the Gyutenganiao project, he will also receive the sample he sent. Go to the Land of Eagles. Spend 2 months or 3 months traveling to the Land of Eagles. The premise is that everything goes well and there is no blockade from the glorious Holy See or other unexpected events. No research can be done on the way. If you send a paper, the teacher may receive it in 2 or 3 days, but if you send a sample, it will take 3.5 months to receive it. Then it would take another 2 or 3 months to run back the same way, but I still couldn't do any research on the way. Gretel didn't even spend a second to think about it, and directly chose the former. His determination impressed Elder Fahim. Yo! A light flashed under the old man's white eyebrows. Slowly he raised his eyelids, and caressed Gretel from top to bottom. So sure? Aren't you afraid of delaying it for a year or 2 and not being able to study anything? As for the elven magic on the periphery of the sealed secret realm, the lowest level starts at level 7 or 8. The seal in the center of the secret realm was originally created by many legends, even several legends worked together to seal one place. Let alone 1 or 2 years, even 10 or 8 years, it will not be easy for you to understand and study these magics. Look at Dizia, she is already a level 16 spellcaster. After leaving Eternal Meeting Island, she studied here for more than 100 years before she could go deep into the secret realm to repair the seal. Gretel smiled. He really couldn't understand the magic-related information, but who said that he couldn't do research if he couldn't understand it? Elder, you didn't say you wanted to completely solve the problem. I'll just do a preliminary study and get some preliminary results, isn't that enough? Even so, he still dove into the information given by the elder. Hey, any research must start with reading papers and materials. And the information on the sealed elf secret realm is more than 10 times or 100 times more than the information on Jasmine's father's medical records. This, so much, dash. Greet stood in the study, looking up, looking up, looking up. The elder's study looks small from the outside, only 20 square meters, with a floor height of less than 4 meters. But once you step inside, you will find a different world. Going in from the study door, there are 1 row of bookshelves, 2 rows of bookshelves. Gretel pressed against the wall and walked through 20 rows of bookshelves in one breath, but still did not reach the end. The whole feeling was like the secret treasury of the Parliament where he had gone in to pick out prizes. I don't know how much space magic was added to it. If this bookshelf is full of paper books, I will finish them one day. The problem was, Greet put his hand on the bookshelf and picked up the first board. The magic power was slightly stimulated, and a thick aura rushed towards him. The magic is turbulent. Light and shadow intersect. Men and women chanted incantations hurriedly, but the syllables were not messed up. Either crisp or soft, the sounds are connected one after another, creating a sonorous and iron-blooded sound. Various spells, either recognized by Gretel or not, appeared in the air one after another. Flow, solidify, stick to the invisible wall, and blend in quietly. There's even blood, flowing, sprayed, smeared. Blood mixed with magic crystals and mineral sand, blood mixed with plant juices, and even blood sprayed directly by the spirit responsible for the seal cutting his wrist. Gretel watched intently, trying to remember, understand, and compare all the spells. The wooden board in his hand is heavy, thick, and dense, with a hint of dark green in the darkness, and exudes a faint fragrance. The extremely thin growth rings are placed one next to the other, so tight that there is no space for a finger. This is green star sandalwood. It only grows in places with abundant and stable magic power. It is extremely sensitive to changes in magic power. Unknowingly, Elder Fahim walked to Gretel and pressed the wooden board in his hand. This kind of magical plant is often used by us to store important information. Each annual ring can store information for a year. Just move your finger and use magic to stimulate the next annual ring. Gretel moved his fingertips carefully. Soon, another record rose up and poured into his mind. He recorded and studied eagerly. The sun outside the study passed through the sky and then fell below the treetops. The glow of the lily of the valley on the roof of the study changed from bright white to light yellow, and then to a soft halo of yellow. Greet hugged the second wooden board and had changed from standing to leaning, and then from leaning to sitting on the floor, with his back firmly leaning against the wall. His face was pale, his eyes were straight, his forehead was wet with sweat, and the locks stuck to his forehead. What's going on? He was picked up by Elder Fahim and handed over to Sarala. Sarala was shocked when she saw this. What's in this study? There's nothing strange, right? Succubus. Banshee. Dark elf. In the stories the old man told, those strange creatures, but there shouldn't be any here. There is a legend sitting in the middle of the big forest, shouldn't these things sneak out, right? Or, in which book, what kind of creature is sealed that shouldn't exist? I'm tired from reading too many books. Elder Fahim carried him and handed him to Sarala. Greet's head was drooped, and his limbs were drooping, like a kitten being held by the neck by its mother. She raised her head and forced a smile. I'm fine. You still said it was okay. You have exhausted your mental energy too much. Elder Fahim interrupted him. You are only level 12. Even if you are a child that is loved by nature and your mental strength is as solid as that of a level 14 caster, you cannot watch like this day and night. Oh. You can only watch for half a day tomorrow. For the remaining half day, let Yudian train you to fight. Ah, no. Greet couldn't even protest. Sarara quickly put him on a chair, stuffed a cup into his hand for him to drink water, squatted next to him, and applied the cleansing technique on him. Why are you in such a hurry? It takes you 10 years to read thousands of years of records in one day. Are you feeling better? Gretel closed his eyes and drank water one by one, without even the strength to answer. After drinking a small glass of water, my hand sank and another glass was stuffed into it. This is the emerald tree I found today. A cut was made in the bark of the tree, and the sap flowing out is sweet and refreshing. I also added some honey for you, it is very delicious. Cough, 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 give me water. Sarara, what you call delicious tastes bad to me. The sap is sweet enough. If you add honey, it won't melt at all. Regardless of whether you have a sore throat or not, the effect of sap plus honey is indeed immediate. After one drink, he was able to stand up, walk, and move outside to eat. Sarala followed him and kept adding things to his bowl. This is the meat of the bamboo shoot-tail dolphin. The meat of this kind of capybara is very tender, especially the piece at the tip of the tail, which is particularly fragrant. I caught it for a long time before I caught a half-sized nest. You can eat a few more pieces. Ah! One piece, 3 or 5 pieces, the red and shiny meat was piled up to the top in an instant. This is the meat of a piranha. This fish is so ferocious that it can still bite people after cutting off its head for half an hour. But the meat is very fresh. Very fresh. Greet, look, this bowl of fish soup is milky white. So fresh that your eyebrows can fall off. A large bowl of soup, which could only be held with 2 hands, landed in front of Gretel with a thud. There is a thin layer of puff pastry on the milky white soup surface, and pieces of pinkish white fish meat are tumbling in the soup. These are the eggs of the Quetzalcoatl. For these eggs, they chased me for 200 miles. If I hadn't been too embarrassed to fight back, I would have killed them. 5 or 6 fist-sized bird eggs have been peeled off, with interlaced patterns on the whites. Where the egg white is particularly thin, a small gap opens, and the strong fragrance of the egg yolk spurts out. Sarala, I can't eat so much. Gretel smiled bitterly. Sarala pushed the food bowl towards him resolutely. You can eat it? You're so tired because you haven't eaten enough. Look, you've eaten the least on the table. It really is. Gretel raised his eyes and looked up. There were several soldiers, including Bernard, Mr. Hawthorne, Sicilian, and Udian. The 4 of them sat in a row, and the meat was piled up on the plate to form hills. Greet took a casual look and saw 4, no, 5, no, 7 or 8 big elbows. Basically, if a warrior can eat a piece of meat bigger than his own head, those are the basic operations. Looking at Ms. Jasmine's lithe figure, the area of the plate in front of her and the volume of food on the plate were definitely much larger than those of her husband. Annery Ling, Dizia, and the 2 spellcasting ladies obviously have no intention of being modest. At best, vegetables, fruits, nuts, etc. in the food account for a larger proportion, but the surging magic power in the fruits, it cannot be underestimated. As for Sarala, forget it, Sarala really didn't let go of the food, it was just for fun. Sarala, aren't you going to let me get fat? Greet tried to make a final struggle. Unexpectedly, Sarala said plausibly. Aren't you going to have warrior training tomorrow? Yes, Udian bit off a piece of venison and interjected vaguely. Become a bear and run around the forest 2 or 3 times. How much meat will you digest? If you don't eat a little full, how can you fight? Gretel, don't you want to recuperate? No matter how much you recuperate, beating you like this is no different from taking a walk. Gretel buried himself in his rice bowl silently. It seems that the results must be produced quickly, but at worst, the research direction must be found quickly, so that there is a reason to bury oneself in the research laboratory and never come out until death. Otherwise, how many times can my bones last in the hands of a half-legendary elf warrior? Do you really want him to train himself to level 8, level 10, or level 12? After practicing close combat, practice archery. After practicing archery, practice fighting in leopard form. Double monthly pastime. Double monthly pastime. Cat has been working hard to update from October 1st to 7th. During this time, everyone must give me your monthly tickets. Meow meow shadowless claw. Knock on the keyboard hard and summon the guaranteed monthly ticket. Thanks to @Wuming for the 1,500 starting coins. Thanks to @Logic Joke for the 500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1130. Gretel made up his mind and changed the direction of his research the next day. First of all, he ignored all the repeated sealing and strengthening processes that took place thousands of years ago. Please Elder Fahim, please find the records of the last 200 years and look at them from back to front. Secondly, he no longer has to worry about what those magics, incantations, and magic arrays mean and what they can do. Instead, bang, 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 let go of all the parts involving magic, and only focus on one direction. Substance. Elder, when building and repairing the seal, what materials did you use? How much did you use? In other words, what materials did you use for each meter of seal, and how much did you use? After 10 days and 8 days of hard work, Gretel pushed a floating saucer and went to find Elder Fahim. On the floating saucer, there are 3 tree trunk slices with annual rings, 2 pieces of colorful and fine textured snake skin, and 5 or 6 deep magic crystals. I searched for a long time and only found these materials. I have never heard of most of the materials' names. Oh, these Elder Fahim is indeed a legendary elder who has been guarding the local area for hundreds of years. He can tell which piece of information it is by just touching it. He slightly bent his fingertips and flicked forward, and several pieces of light and shadow stood up at the same time. Well, I used the tortoise shells of the 3-sided musk turtle and cloud-spotted turtle, the horns of the sharp-nosed rhinoceros, the flight feathers and blood of the red-tailed thunder eagle, and the juice of the golden tiger-tail piranha. The old man talked endlessly and kept his treasures in mind. Say a name and let out a few pieces of light and shadow, the image of the source plant or animal, the appearance of the extract, the appearance of the processed product. It was obvious that he was familiar with every one of these plants and animals, and had even caught, collected, and processed many of them himself. Maybe he didn't enter the secret realm many times, but he provided the most reliable support for the warriors who repaired the seal. Greet stood nearby and listened. I heard more than 20 names at once, all of which were certain plants, certain animals, and occasionally certain gems. He finally couldn't help but ask. Elder, what minerals are used in this seal? In particular, what metals are used? What, you think metal is more reliable? Elder Fahim's eyes shot over like sharp arrows. Even if there was no evil in Greet's heart, he felt a sudden pain in his heart and said quickly. Isn't this, we used lead to isolate pollution rays before, which was very useful. And for spellcasters, metal has always been very useful for isolating magical power. It's not like we haven't tried this idea before, Elder Fahim sighed. He got into the library, and after a while, he took out a piece of wood heart that was dark green in color and so thick that it was almost black. Look, this is a record of the first few seals. The seniors at that time used mostly various metals at the beginning. But he touched it lightly, and the records shone out one by one. There are words, images, and rushing sounds. It's melting. It's melting. Cool down quickly. Don't use the ice pick technique. Do you want to penetrate it? Snowstorm. No way. If it's cold and hot at the same time, it will make it even softer. It's expanding. It's going to explode. Escape quickly. You go first. I'll stop you. There was a loud bang and debris flew everywhere. Gretel closed his eyes subconsciously and turned his head to avoid it. Then, when he opened his eyes, the light and shadow in front of him had disappeared, leaving only the wooden heart lying quietly. We have tried many formulas. Fine gold, mithril, gold, silver, copper, iron, and tin. Elder Fahim's voice sounded like a sigh. Of course, there is also the lead you mentioned. But it's useless, it's useless. In front of the exploding center of the secret realm, nothing is useful. The old man closed his eyes tightly. How many years have passed, the golden liquid that rolled, roared, swept everything, and exploded all obstacles was still imprinted on his retina. That kind of energy is too powerful, too violent, only spells can block spells, and only energy can restrain energy. Gretel sighed softly. This problem that the elves encountered was just like the problem that humans all over the world encountered in his previous life. No matter, can restrain the violent power of nuclear fusion. If you want to restrain yourself, you can only use a magnetic field, a force field, something invisible and invisible. So before you blow up your secret realm, are you playing with nuclear fission, or have you already played with nuclear fusion? Forget it, none of this matters. Greet rubbed her temples. It's definitely not possible to just use metal in the center. What about the surrounding area? I took a look at it when I was advancing. It seems that the seals around the secret realm are circles, circles, circles. He raised his hand and outlined circles of light and shadow based on the glimpses he had during the advancement process. There are little stars all around, leaking openly or covertly. The places where these seals have cracks and leaks can always be made of metal, right? That won't work either. Elder Fahim sighed again. He went into the library again, and when he came back this time, he was holding a long roll of snakeskin in his hand. The snakeskin looked black at first glance, but after taking a few steps, the fine and dense snake scales changed with the angle, exuding complex brilliance. Elder Fahim caressed the snakeskin, and the magic power flowed through it. In a moment, a map rose from the snakeskin. Look, here, 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 here. The old man's somewhat wrinkled fingers stroked the map, clicking on the light and shadow one by one. We have all tried to seal it with metal. However, for one thing, high-level monsters often come and go at the leaked location. As long as foreign objects appear there, they will scratch and gnaw on whatever they see. Furthermore, metal corrodes quickly. As long as it is not made of gold, if a wall is erected there and exposed to the sun and rain, it will be completely rusted in 10 years. The gold material is useless for sealing leaks. Moreover, we elves are not good at mining and smelting mineral deposits. When we moved to the New World, we parted ways with the dwarves. Mining mineral deposits relies on a small number of magical beasts, and the little metal is only enough to make armor and weapons. Gretel was really helpless. Industry, industry, it is really difficult for a society without a large industrial foundation. Although most of the daily needs of the elves can be replaced by magic, there are still shortcomings. Oh, by the way, there aren't many mineral deposits in the rainforest. Even with the mining capabilities of the nearby indigenous people, we can't use the stuff they produce. We have to transport it from Yangju Island. Gretel held back his rants. He had seen enough of the metal produced by the natives in the Eagle country. Whether it was pure or other indicators, it really couldn't be used. Of course, he is not a metallurgist, and what he produces may be even more tragic. You can buy finished products for small quantities, but for large quantities, you have to find another way. I still want to try using metal. Elder, please help me sort out what metal formulas have been used to seal leaks recently. I'll try some that I haven't used before. Elder Fahim hesitated to speak, but finally nodded. He called Anari Ling, Dizia, Idian, Sasuyan and Jasmine to go into the library together and got busy up and down. This. Take this out too. Idian walked past Greet with 2 pieces of wood in his left hand, 3 leaves in his right hand, and an animal skin on his head. He stopped and suddenly said, "You're useless like this. There is a kind of golden armored beast in the contaminated area. We originally raised it for mining. After the secret realm was exploded, some survived. They especially like to eat minerals. If a piece of iron is thrown on the ground, a group can gather in less than half a day. Build a stone wall outside the metal wall. It's useless if the building is thin. Idian, or rather, the elves who maintain the secret realm here, have used all kinds of methods before. A stone wall of at least 2 feet thick is required to be barely effective. Moreover, it must be complete without any gaps to block this thing. Such a large boulder is difficult to mine. It is constructed with magic and the surrounding natural forces. It's too thin." Greet nodded and brushed up the records. A complete wall of at least 2 feet thick must be formed at one time, preferably without magic. A metal plate, preferably a thick lead plate, is sandwiched between them to block the leaked radiation. The most important thing is that the leaked power explodes on the metal wall. The metal wall will get hot very quickly. It will get hot, melt, and flow down, and then it will be useless. The power of magic can block those leaked things. But it needs constant maintenance. Greet continued to write quickly. The temperature needs to be lowered, the temperature needs to be lowered, either to lower the temperature, or to use other methods to block, absorb, and digest these forces. Udian, please do me a favor and get as many copies of the various things you find as possible. Put them together with the lead plates and let me try to see if there is anything that can absorb the leaked power. Idian took a breath silently. All kinds of things. All kinds of animals, plants, minerals, whatever he can think of, a copy of them all? How much do you want? At least 10 pounds, 10 pounds of each item. Gretel looked at his expression carefully. I need more lead sheets, bring them several thousand kilograms, I don't have much inventory in hand, if animals and plants are not convenient, let's start with minerals. You, just torment me. Idian complained and disappeared. I don't know how he did it. In short, a month later, this elf warrior appeared in front of Gretel's research institute with a large number of natives, carrying various supplies. Come on, come on. This is malachite, this is cloud sand, this is Venus sand, this is jet jade, this is frost stone, try them all. Double monthly pastime. Double monthly pastime. Cat has been working hard to update from October 1st to 7th. During this time, everyone must give me your monthly tickets. Continue to call for guaranteed monthly tickets, there are still people who haven't given them. Recommend a book from an old friend. I read more than 20,000 words in one go, and the story is still a bit interesting. The background is somewhat similar to the dragon. It can be regarded as a time travel version of the Sui and Tang dynasties' heroes. Mountains and rivers cleanse autumn. Yun Changjing traveled through time. Traveling to an ancient world that is imaginary but not completely imaginary, you can see the shadow of the original world line everywhere, but you stubbornly seize every variable to create your own history. He traveled through time and became a rich man, but his family was in decline and his elders were useless. When he woke up, he was a young military officer, but the dynasty was about to fall and the soldiers were in high danger. Change the dynasty and revitalize Daki? No, 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 Yun Changjing said that the first goal is to let himself live better and live easier. While studying the ancients diligently to prevent the character design from collapsing, I also carefully searched for traces of the original historical line from the clues. Then, he discovered that he was not the only time traveler. Why are we here? Where do we go from here? Are we an accident of the eternal galaxy, or are we the struggle of this world to change its established destiny? Mountains and rivers are always there, and the years are flowing. This is an ordinary person's time travel adventure. This is a biography of heroes of the Sui and Tang dynasties from another generation. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 1131. Chapter 1128. Gretel Nordmark Radioactive Research Institute begins construction. Greet looked at the rattan boxes, wooden boxes, rattan baskets, and various containers in front of him, and his face turned dark instantly. Those boxes and baskets were piled one after another as far as the eye could see. The line started from the door of his research room, all the way to the edge of the open space outside the laboratory, and then far into the woods. 1, 2, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, 200. When will I be able to do this experiment? Gretel was not unprepared. He didn't know how many types of minerals there were in the world, but at least he had visited the Parliament's alchemy workshop. In the workshop, all kinds of raw minerals are piled up grid by grid, like a museum. Sample cabinets are 1.5 meters high, 1 meter wide and 0.5 meters deep. Each cabinet holds 15 kinds of samples. Placed against the wall, it can fill 10 connected rooms. In total, there may be less than 10,000 kinds, but if there are 1,000 kinds, it will definitely be more than 10,000. Come on, These are what you want, they're all yours. Idion crossed his arms and looked at Greet, who had a grimace on his face, trying not to smile too obviously. I can't help you with the next experiment, I'll leave 10 natives for you to help you carry it. God knows, he summoned the surrounding indigenous villages, sent out 1 or 2 warriors from each village, and rushed to the western mountains in a mighty manner. Then find the local nobles, take out a large piece of gold, and tear it into small strips with both hands. Bring me 10 pounds of all kinds of ore, no, 20 pounds. Then, bring me 10,000 pounds of lead. This, not so much. A high-level warrior who didn't know what level he was, but who was definitely very powerful, was surrounded by a large group of high-level and mid-level warriors behind him. The indigenous nobles on the West Mountain Range immediately softened, picked up the gold bars, and pinched them with their fingernails. You have to pay more. You sort out all the ore first. After you sort it out, you can calculate the money for everything. In short, I won't lose you. Money is not an issue. For a half-step legendary elf warrior who is hundreds of years old, there is a pile of gold, high-level warcraft materials, etc. just by cleaning the warehouse. However, we must gather manpower along the way, take people back and forth thousands of miles, transport dozens of tons of heavy ore back and so on. He is a half-legend, when has he ever done such a boring thing? You must put something in front of Gretel, and then take a good look at his bitter face. Gretel's face indeed drooped, almost dripping with pain. To be honest, he knew the answer to stopping the burning of nuclear materials was simply to pour borax into it. Pour several tons of borax into the reactor, and you don't have to worry about the thing being destroyed. Oh, and if the reactor burns too much, it's best to mix a lot of crushed lead into the borax. However, let alone whether the methods from the previous life can be applied to the gadgets created by the elves, even if they can, the question now is: among these thousands of mineral sands, which one is borax? You know, this is an era when each ore has several names and dozens of aliases. As for iron ore alone, there are many types such as magnetite, hematite, magamite, ilmenite, limonite, and siderite. Among limonite, there are various names such as earthy yellow, ochre soil, iron red iron, and wooden fish stone. As for the ore sample library that Greet saw in the Alchemy Guild, they collected each type of ore separately and gave it a separate name. This is the eagle horn stone, this is the heart connecting stone, this is the moonlight sand. Greet grimaced and read the labels one by one. After reading a few, he straightened up and asked Yudian next to him. Hey, are they all labeled with names? That's for sure. How can I sell it without a name? Yudian said matter-of-factly. Not only are the names of the indigenous people marked, but also the names of the elves. Don't look at me like this, I don't do anything but let people transport goods. More than half a month is enough for all the elven spellcasters to all the mineral sand needs to be tested for identification. That's great, Gretel's eyes lit up. Is there any borax? What? Borax? Greet repeated patiently. Idion shook his head. No, either it doesn't exist, or even the elves and local aborigines don't call it this name. You can find it yourself. Gretel, There's no way, he doesn't know borax or borax ore. The only thing he knew was medical boric acid solution, provided it had a label on it. Since there was no hospital and no hospital pharmacy, borax and all boron products were no longer available to him. Greet sighed painfully. He straightened up, looked around, and began to give orders. Please do me a favor. Make all the lead we got this time into lead boxes with a thickness of 1 centimeter and a volume of 1 liter. Then, fill each lead box with half a box of ore. It should be possible, right? You should be able to do such a simple job, right? You heard me, let's go to work. Idion's sonorous voice echoed through the clearing. The indigenous warriors, as well as the men brought over by the indigenous warriors to help carry the load as coolies, looked at each other in confusion. After a while, a hesitant voice sounded. "What is centimeter?" Gretel was furious. Not far away, Ms. Jasmine, who came over to watch the fun, burst out laughing. "Okay, let me direct them." She pushed Gretel and asked him to go about his business. "Turn around and greet her husband. Come and help. First, make a pile of clay molds according to Gretel's request. Once the clay molds are ready, then build a stove, burn the lead blocks, and fill them with lead water. It's very fast." Gretel. Manual work has become useless, and I didn't even think of making a lead box. This is the fastest way to work. The former owner of an adventurer supplies store and a master craftsman who rubs various adventurer tools by hand. When it comes to making hundreds of lead boxes, he just rubs them casually with his eyes closed. Quickly, he took over the work. Couples work together so they don't get tired of work. A group of natives were commanded by them to knead, stir, throw, and spin around in circles. Greet stood aside for half a minute, but found that he couldn't intervene, so he had to go and take identification skills for the ores one by one. Flat sand, mirror sand, glossy sand, stone yellow, coxcomb stone, stone green, rashu keikiki stone. The level of the identification technique is not high, and the consumption is not large, but after taking 100 or 200 shots, Gretel was still dizzy. The most important thing is that after taking 100 or 200 pictures in a row, he couldn't find a familiar name from his previous life. This version of the identification technique has not been updated. The elements are simple. Here's the molecular formula. All of them have been discovered and named, but why are they not included in the identification technique? Gretel took a picture, wrote a note, squatted down and stuck it on the ore box, took another picture, wrote another note, and squatted again. Going back and forth, doing more than 200 non-standard squats, I finally sat down on the ground. "You can't do this job anymore. His precious labor cannot be used for this. Sister Jasmine, Sister Jasmine," he shouted. Ms. Jasmine took 3 steps at a time and rushed over. "How? Sister Jasmine, let Bernard help your husband," Greet ordered her confidently. "The identification technique you learned is the human version, right? Help me take a picture of the identification technique for these ore sands and make a book. Then, watch them make the lead box, put the ore sand, and then another send it here." Ms. Jasmine shook her head and smiled. Looking at Gretel again, he dived into the research room again. Greet walked around and around the research room. This research room was built by Udian before he returned from the secret center, and its purpose was to contain radioactive items. Especially the samples taken from various places in the center of the secret realm, around the secret realm, and in the peripheral contaminated areas. The entire research room is a small rocky mountain with deep soil that is not close to a water source. The ground is leveled with fossils as mud, all the way to 5 meters underground. Then, turn mud into stone to erect a rock wall on top of a rock layer that is at least 2 meters thick. The outer wall is at least 2 meters thick, and each inner wall is at least 1 meter thick, with a layer of lead sandwiched between them. As for the door of each research room and the door of each corridor, the door is also made of 30 centimeters thick stone, with lead sheets sandwiched in as usual. There are 3 areas and 2 passages, equipped with changing rooms and shower rooms. Both ends of the corridor are engraved with ray measuring spells. The entire institute cannot be said to be very close to the underground air raid shelters in Greet's impression, especially the ones designed to prevent nuclear war. It can only be said to be exactly the same. In each research room, there are several large boxes quietly placed. The box is made of lead, thick, heavy, and heavy. The lid is tightly sealed, it cannot be tighter. An extra circle of lead water is poured into the sealing area of the lid. Greet walked to the entrance of the outer corridor and stopped. He threw out his secret eye and flew in to take a look around. Research room number 1, research room number 2, research room number 3. Finally, he sighed in annoyance. There seems to be not enough space. There is so much mineral sand and thousands of boxes to put in it. It seems that the space is not big enough. Does he want to build another research institute according to the previous standards? Or put an extra layer on top? As for the research institute he built, the thickness of the walls, the thickness of the doors, and the thickness of the rooms, will it collapse if another layer is built? Unfortunately, Gretel was not in the field of construction engineering, so at this time he could only work hard to draw drawings, preparing to take them to Elder Fahim for advice. Just halfway through the drawing, Mr. Hawthorne's loud voice shouted, "Mage Nordmark! The first batch of lead boxes are ready. The ore is also placed. What should we do now?" "Send them all over," Gretel shouted back with all his strength. With a bang, a group of natives carried a wooden frame like a bedboard and a lead box to the entrance of the institute. He was about to send it further in, but was blocked by Gretel. "Stop. I will be responsible for the next work. Invisible servant. It's full of radioactive materials. Who told you to run around? Hey, it's better to be an invisible servant. He has no body, so he's not afraid of getting radiation sickness. He dissipates directly after finishing his work and won't take the pollutants out of the institute. Double monthly pastime. Double monthly pastime. Is there any big boss who hasn't voted for the guaranteed monthly ticket? Is there any quick-thinking big boss who has already saved up a new monthly ticket? Cats want it. The cat is squatting by the monthly ticket pool, tapping the water with its tail to catch monthly tickets. Can it catch it? Thanks to Atwenjiu, for the tip of 100 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1132. Gretel. Do you want my help? Cyrilla jumped over and stood next to Gretel, looking side by side at the arcane eye screen with him. The silver dragon girl touched around, took a closer look, opened this box, and then opened that basket. After looking at all the ore, he finally ran back to Gretel. Alas, these mineral sands are not good looking at all. Even if there is a handful of sparkling ones, they don't have the smell of gems that she likes. Greet's side is more important. Gretel nodded to her without moving his eyes. He was staring at the light screen in front of him, relying on the guidance of the light screen to let the invisible servants carry the ore forward. In the Radiological Research Institute, the three most important things are, of course, leak prevention, and leak prevention. In the previous research institute, wherever robots could be operated remotely, remote operations were always used. Where remote operation is not possible, thick protective clothing must be worn for operation. All entry and exit must be strictly abided by operating procedures. Greet didn't want to wear a heavy lead suit, carry an oxygen tank on his back, and be sweaty and tired to operate. In his previous life, he wore a full-body protective suit to prevent viruses. After 8 hours, water was dripping from the protective suit. He must carry the 600 kilograms of lead armor. Well, with the knight's strength and physique, he may not be able to carry it. However, there is an alternative. Why would he, a noble spellcaster, bother to carry it himself? Suffer this kind of foreign crime? 4 invisible servants, 2 in groups, 1 in front and 1 behind, each carried a bed of lead boxes inside. The invisible servants fell silently, and even their bodies were invisible. Only the consciousness of the caster could reflect their figures. Move forward, lift your feet, step down, turn. In the dimly lit corridor, the lead box on the wooden board slowly floated forward. Sarala only watched it for a short while before feeling bored. When is this going to be moved? I'll do it, I'll do it. I'm much faster than them. Hey! Don't go in, Gretel quickly stopped her. It's dangerous in here. Even if you, well, don't go in there. Then how long are you going to do it? Cyrilla muttered unhappily. How many invisible servants can you command by yourself? 4. 8. There are so many lead boxes, why don't we think of a more convenient way, like the tracks for transporting or in the dwarf cave? Gretel had thought about this plan before. However, he is not good at alchemy. Standard rails and mine carts are straight and smooth, and it is difficult for him to make them by himself. There is a little monster gold coin who can help, but rubbing such a bulky piece really consumes gold coins on the one hand, and on the other hand, there is not so much metal for him to waste. Moreover, when I was doing research before, I never imagined that there would be so many things that needed to be transported. He explained to Cyrilla in a low voice, and Cyrilla nodded, feeling a little frustrated. Staring at the light screen, he whispered. It would be great if there was a mage tower. With the tower spirit, the work of commanding invisible servants and transporting things can be left to the tower spirit. Gretel sweated. He previously bought a mobile tower spirit, and later built a mage tower in the hospital and used it for the hospital's mage tower. Later, I transformed my meditation core into a biological computer, and since then I have never felt that I lacked computing power. When I set off from Nevis, I didn't even think about buying a mobile tower to take with me. Well, at that time, I couldn't actually afford it. All in all, he never thought that the tower spirit could be used for laziness. Especially now, when there are a lot of low-end, repetitive, low-cost things to do, could he just relax outside the institute and let the meditation core do the work? Actually, there is another way. Cyrilla's eyes suddenly lit up and she whispered. Gretel looked at her curiously. What? Freeze the ground. Cyrilla's eyes were bright. The silver dragon girl talked about her own profession, gesticulating with great excitement. It's very simple. I just need to take a breath like this. She inhaled hard, inhaled, stood on tiptoes, and raised her chin high, making it take a deep breath. Look. Greet thought for her in her mind. Cyrilla took a deep breath. Take a breath. Then blow inside. I can freeze the entire tunnel, from the inside to the outside. Freeze it with a layer of ice. It will be slippery. By then, all the lead boxes. She raised her hands high, then bent down and made a throwing motion. Brush. Gretel slowly opened his mouth. Cyrilla's idea is simple, efficient, and truly fantastic, but it cannot be said to be unreasonable. Mainly, the cost is low. Just take a breath. Cyrilla, you are amazing. Gretel looked at Cyrilla with admiration. This idea is so awesome. Blow it in with one breath, freezing the ground, transporting items at a low cost. When the luck was over, she took another breath to suck out the cold air. The institute was clean, as if nothing had happened. That's it? Cyrilla geared up and poked her head into the corridor. Greet quickly pressed her. Wait. Send these 2 batches of goods first. All right. Cyrilla felt depressed for a moment. Just for a moment, he smiled again. Anyway, just wait for a while. When they are ready, I will blow them. The area of the research institute is not too large, and it does not take long for the invisible servant to walk to the deepest research room. The two of them stared at the arcane eye screen together. After a while, they saw the invisible servant carrying 2 wooden boards and sending the lead box into the research room side by side. The next moment, Cyrilla couldn't wait to take a breath. Etc. An idea flashed through Gretel's mind and he called an emergency stop. Sarala's breath came to her lips. She quickly shut up and swallowed hard. Ahem. 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 She choked with tears, covered her mouth, and glared at Greet. After finally calming down, he took a few quick breaths and glared at Gretel fiercely. Next time if you have something to say it earlier. It's my fault, it's my fault. Gretel folded his hands in front of him, shook them up and down, and apologized repeatedly. I just thought of it. I remember that tin will turn into powder at low temperatures. I can't remember if lead will turn into powder in the same way. Many things inside are packed in lead boxes. We don't be in a hurry to exhale, why don't you give it a try first? Is it that cold? It must be cold. Sarala's breath is the coldest. I remember you said that if you spray it with one breath, even the steel will freeze to a crisp. Of course, Sarala raised her head proudly. The corners of his mouth curved happily, then he paused and pretended to be modest. Like that kind of liquid nitrogen, the temperature of liquid helium. I may not be able to blow it so cold, but it can freeze a handful of steel easily. Unless it is specially added with magic defense, or added I got the armor of adamantine and mithril, and I sprayed it, click. Yes, we have seen how powerful Sarala's breathing is several times. Greet gave her a thumbs up. So, before we try our best to exhale, shall we try it with a lead box first? If it really freezes and cracks, then, we should restrain ourselves and use less force. Anyway, what we want, is it just a slide? Well, let's try it first. Sarala accepted Gretel's words as a matter of course. She took a row of lead boxes, lined them up, and started spraying them one by one. Call. This seems to be no problem. Call. This squirt was a bit more forceful. I picked it up, touched it, and pinched it, and it seemed to be fine. Call. The result of this bite, well, clicks. Did I spray too much, or did I use too much force when I squeezed the lead box? Gretel accompanies her and tries every step of the way. After trying for a long time, I finally found a suitable temperature. I know. I just need to use half of my strength, blow carefully, and I will definitely not freeze the lead box to crack. Greet, get out of the way, look. It's me. Sarala Moonlight Face. Greet took a deep breath. A frosty white airflow violently rushed into the laboratory. The floor, walls, ceiling, and dark rocks of the corridor were soon covered with a layer of solid ice. Along the stone wall, it extends forward quietly and quickly. Slow down. Slow down, Gretel half bent, turning his face sideways, almost letting one eye touch the ground. While observing the shape of the ground, he kept reminding. Pay attention to the shape. Pay attention to keeping the ground smooth. Pay attention to maintaining the height. It is best to have the outside a little higher than the inside. If not, it cannot be lower than the inside. Sarala remained silent, controlled her breathing, and breathed inward steadily and longly. After spraying it in one breath, he straightened up and let out a sweet moan. I know I've been playing like this since I was a child. When I was a child, I would spray like this for a while in my parents' dragon's nest, and then go skating on it. Don't worry, I'm pretty good at it. Greet looked up and smiled at her. Sarala wrinkled her nose, snorted proudly, and reached out to him. Bring it. What? Lead box. Gretel quickly handed over a lead box with both hands. A 1 centimeter thick lead box with a volume of 1 liter, and half a box of ore filled with it, was really heavy. He really needed both hands to hold it. Sarala easily took it with one hand, lunged forward with her left leg, lunged back with her right leg, stretched her left hand slightly forward, held the lead box in her right hand, and swung it backwards. Go. With a swipe, the lead box fell on the ice and sped away. Follow the smooth, flat, slightly downward curve, spin in a circle, and plunge into the research room. With a bang, it hit the lead box sealed by ice. Another one. Boom. Another one. Bang. Oops, it's not right this time. Another one. Bang. Wow. Double kill. Sarah wanted to pass the lead box again and again, and threw it in excitedly. Gretel squatted next to her, passing the lead boxes to her one by one, silently cursing. Does this mean that the Radioactive Research Institute is a bowling lane? Double monthly pastime. Double monthly pastime. The cat squatted by the monthly ticket pond, slapping the water with its tail, trying hard to catch monthly tickets. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1133. Gretel squatted at the entrance of the institute, passing and throwing bowling balls with Sarah, or strictly speaking, curling. A research room was full. Sarah took away the cold air, breathed out again, and laid an ice path. The ice road turned and extended towards the second research room, and Sarah continued to throw the lead box. Outside the research institute, a dozen elves sat in a circle around Elder Fahim. On the periphery, a large group of natives sat quietly, pricking their ears and listening to the discussions of the elves. I think we should launch another cleaning operation. Udion waved his arms and made an impassioned speech. This time when I entered the secret realm, I confirmed that as long as you wear lead armor and take medicine beforehand, you will suffer much less damage. In the past, we also had early warning methods for the danger of being suddenly injured when approaching the barrier. Especially in the peripheral polluted areas, if you take precautions in advance, you will hardly be harmed. High-level warriors can completely ignore this kind of damage, and mid-level warriors only need a little rest. What about inside the secret realm? Ashmoon Song was the first to shout back. Idion shook his head. We will not enter the secret realm for the time being. Clean up the monsters in the contaminated area and reduce their number, which will reduce the pressure on the surrounding forests. Then, we will start to restore nature. There was a lot of nodding up and down. Most of the elves were thoughtful, or waiting for Elder Fahim to speak, while the surrounding natives were already whispering to each other and whispering in agreement. Those monsters in the contaminated area are the most annoying. You can't eat them, wear them, or feed them to livestock. If you throw it into the water source, it will pollute the water source. You can only find a place far outside the village, dig a hole deep and bury it. If you bury it too close, the people in the village will get strange diseases. If a stronger monster comes, a village will be destroyed. If the distinguished Lin Xingman hadn't been assisting us, we don't know how many more people would have died. But if you go in for cleaning, will you get a strange disease? My father's father. Hey! Didn't you listen to what Yudian Lin Xing said? As long as you protect yourself, you'll be fine. The popularity of the elves in this big forest is still very good. They have high levels and strong combat capabilities. They have always appeared in front of the local indigenous people as instructors and protectors. Teach them to grow herbs, teach them to cast spells, and mentor the young and qualified warriors among them. Rescue the natives in distress, treat them, and escort them back to the village. More importantly, the elves have a very small population and basically do not compete with the natives for territory. Moreover, they live extremely long. An elf may have taught a certain indigenous warrior, as well as his father, his grandfather, his grandfather's grandfather's grandfather. If the elves hadn't stopped them vigorously, it's likely that all the indigenous villages would have enshrined their gods. After all, the elves made these natives remember the name Lin Xing. Walker in the forest, guardian of nature. Of course, the elves have no control over how the natives understand this title and whether they understand it as another name for God. As the strongest elf warrior in the Fertile Forest, Torrent Forest, and Yuzong Forest, Illidan's reputation among the people nearby is even more noble. The indigenous warriors from various tribes in the forest were either taught by him or taught by the young elves he directed. If you just walk around, you can summon hundreds of villages and hundreds of indigenous warriors. Although the education level of these natives is worrying, and their spellcasting skills are even more worrying, they can still be of great help by helping to carry them or help search for and kill warcraft. Otherwise, how can we patrol an area of millions of square kilometers with just these elves? Even with a broken leg, I can't make the rounds. Even if the information is tipped off, the talking natives are much more reliable than trees and monsters. Are you going to clean now? Elder Fahim stroked his white beard, looked at the map hanging in front of him, and thought quietly. After being silent for a while, he waved to Idian and called him. How much manpower do you need for this cleaning operation? How many places will you clean? How much time do you plan to spend? How many wild beasts and monsters will you kill, and which famous monsters need to be killed? Idian set out to transport ore this month. On the way, he had made repeated plans. When asked by the elder, he immediately answered without thinking. The manpower I brought is enough. For the cleaning area, I suggest focusing on the area close to the rich forest and pushing 50 miles inward. It will take at most half a month to kill more than 20 mid-level monsters. Is it an important monster? He gushed. Elder Fahim nodded first, then shook his head. Iodian, we elves, everyone has magic to protect ourselves, and it is okay to move temporarily in the contaminated area. But these natives, half a month, no magic, only relying on pills, how much damage will they suffer? It won't be very big, right? As for you talking about wearing lead armor. Intermediate warriors, how many of them can wear full-body lead armor and still move without hindrance? Not to mention carrying a tree on their backs, how many of them have the ability to communicate with ancient trees? Idian ran away with his head in his arms under the elder's reproachful gaze. The elder shook his head and smiled as he watched him go away, sighing softly. Beside him, Anari Ling said softly. Teacher, actually after so many years, it's time to organize another cleaning operation. The last cleaning was 50 years ago, even if there were losses, their manpower has recovered after so many years. I'm not saying you shouldn't clean. Elder Fahim shook his head slightly. The old man's eyes swept across the elves in front of him one by one, and with a wave of his hand, a simple map of the secret realm of the elves appeared in front of him. I just want to concentrate my limited manpower on more important places. What's the big deal about killing a few monsters? As long as the contaminated area exists, there will be monsters who run in there out of instinct, or humans in order to advance. He clicked a few points with his fingertips, and the damage on the barrier outside the elf secret realm was particularly eye-catching. These damaged places cannot be repaired, or in other words, the burning mineral veins inside are not extinguished. Cleaning on the outside will always treat the symptoms but not the root cause. Besides, even if you go in to clean, you must try to protect them. Idian has already rushed all the way to Gretel. Seeing Gretel and Sarah shoulder to shoulder, having fun playing curling, he leaned in and squeezed in. Hey, hey, hey. Don't just play around. Little Gretel, help me think of a way. Is there any way to prevent people from getting hurt as much as possible in the polluted area? The lead suit is too heavy, let's change it. The solution. Don't enter the secret realm, just stay in the outer polluted area. Okay, one more task. Gretel dragged over a box of lead boxes, released Wunkin, and asked him to pass the box to Cyrilla, then he took 2 steps away. Are you only operating in contaminated areas? Are they the first few boxes of samples you carried for me when you came out? That's right, Idian nodded loudly. Isn't that what you said? 3 boxes in the contaminated area and 3 boxes in the secret realm. It's best to sample the ones with more readings and the ones with less readings separately. I've marked them all for you and posted them on the boxes. Greet tested the soil swept out from the contaminated area, the broken branches, and the chopped monster horns from a distance. The conclusion is that there is indeed radiation, but it is much smaller than in the elf secret realm. Probably, maybe, this is the difference between the Chernobyl reactor core and the Chernobyl outer tourist area. Because the reactor core is still burning, radioactive dust floats out from time to time, but radioactive dust also has a half-life. Without equipment, it will definitely not work just by taking potassium iodide pills. Greet thought slowly. Udian, let's do another experiment, this time we won't use rabbits. You can help catch some mice. Hundreds or thousands of mice will be enough. Then, let's see if there is any way to prevent them from being harmed. According to Greet's request, the natives in the jungle each contributed their own clothes, cloaks, and mats. Reed fabrics, linen fabrics, deerskin skirts, snakeskin waistcoats, all kinds of items. Piled together, the stench is overwhelming. Gretel pinched his nose to accept these things, stood far away, threw bubbles to himself with one hand, and opened the other hand. Cleaning technique. Cleaning technique. Cleaning technique. How long has it been since I washed these wretched things? He really couldn't bear it without losing his cleaning skills. After throwing away the cleaning skills, it was the turn of these natives to do the next work. You cut these things into small pieces. Spread them in the cage, spread them tightly, and don't allow any light to pass through. You guys, cut these things into small pieces and make clothes for the mice. Am I not clear enough? Make clothes for the mice, cover their torsos, and don't let them bite them off. You guys, cut these things into small pieces and make clothes for the mice. Leave a layer between them, and put a thin layer of lead in each piece of clothing. The natives wailed loudly. However, under Gretel's order, and more importantly, under Idian's close gaze, they still picked up the knives, scissors, and bone needles, one by one, and started working honestly. As for Gretel, she held her chin on the side and thought. What else can be used? Gum. Rubber. Idian. Do yourself a favor and get a batch of rubber for them to experiment with. If it enters the periphery, then by strictly isolating the radiation dust and doing a good job of decontamination, you can resist most of the damage. Taking potassium iodide tablets beforehand can prevent a large part of the damage. If this is not possible, if you wrap your skin tightly, wear a gas mask, and a lead vest, you should be able to carry it. I just don't know how insulating the indigenous people's clothes are. Gretel shuddered when he thought of marching wearing a full-length rubber raincoat, rubber boots, and a gas mask. Do you want me to take out the plague doctor's equipment again? That's so tiring. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of double monthly voting time. Don't be stingy about voting monthly.